Hello everybody and welcome back. In today's video we're going to be taking a fresh look at my studio palette. And this is it. It's still the same palette that I've been using for the last 2 years. I last updated you in 2018 with the colours I was using. And this is the palette, just a cheap plastic palette with 12 wells. It's not quite enough wells for all of the colours I do use, as you'll see, but I've grown quite attached to this palette, and even though I should probably look at getting a different one, I couldn't imagine myself using anything but this. I also really enjoy the large mixing wells this palette comes with. It allows me to mix up all of my colours that I need. If you would like to see more, please consider checking out my website where I sell my handmade paints and also some artwork and prints. I will leave a link to my website down in the description bar below. This is a website that I set up to showcase my artwork and sell a few things. You can also view my gallery on there too. Alternatively, you can also check me out on Patreon, where you can get a few extra bits, including monthly dot card rewards of my handmade watercolours and commercial brands. Again, I will leave the link down in the description bar below if you would like to consider checking that out. So let's get swatching. I'm painting the colours out on cold pressed watercolour paper. This way you'll be able to see any granulation if there is any. I use 18 colours in total, but I don't use all of these colours in every single painting. The 12 wells on the colour palette contain the colours I use and mix them the most with, and the other 6 I just add in around the side of the mixing wells when I need them. I'm swatching as I always do, painting a concentrated swatch of colour at the top of each square and then blending it out with clear water. By doing this, this allows you to see the mass tone of the colour and what the colour would look like in a wash. It also shows you how the paint behaves and flows in water, which can be really helpful. I'm painting these colours in nice large squares so you can see what the paint really looks like. And also I really love painting in large squares like this, it's really fun to do. I am leaving gaps as I go between colours and would recommend you do the same, otherwise they will bleed into each other. I really enjoy looking at other artists' studio palettes. I feel it adds enough depth to their work as I can kind of get behind and see their thought process and their mixing process in how they create a painting. It's also really exciting because it can also sometimes give you ideas or maybe some incentive to try out some different paints or pigments. And you might also find some really good tips, such as 2 colours that may mix together really well that you never really thought of before. The colours and brands that each artist uses can be quite personal and sometimes really specific. If you are looking for tips on making your own studio or watercolour palette, I did do a mini series on this and I will link it up in the iCards above if you would like to go check that out. My studio palette, of course, is personal to me and has colours of my personal choices and preferences, and is tailored to my own painting subjects and what I'd like to paint. We all paint our own favourite subjects and in our own way, and we all have our favourite colours too. There is no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to studio palettes. There may be similarities, but it's always best to tailor each palette to the painter. I'm pretty sure there are painters out there who would find my bright colours and tones really intimidating to work with, and I would also probably find some other artists' colours boring as well if they were really dulled and subdued. It really is down to personal preference, and these work for me, and these are the ones that I really enjoy. I will link down below in the description bar all of the colours that I'm using here on my palette and where you can get them from. And a scan of this will be available on my Patreon page if you want to check it out in some more detail. So now let's look at the colours on my studio palette. So first of what I thought I would do was to find the last sort of palette update that I did, and this is it. So this was done 2 years ago in 2018. These were the colours that I had on my palette then. So as you can see, it's probably around the same number of colours. I think there are 17 here, whereas today I have 18. And there are a couple of changes from 2 years ago to now. So first off, I'm going to talk about the colours that have changed or been removed. So first colour is the Schlevenier Yellow Deep. I removed this colour off and replaced it with Sennelier Yellow Deep, just because I think Sennelier Yellow Deep is a little bit of a better colour. The next colour that's been removed completely is the Royal Purple Lake by Old Holland. Personally, I found this not so bright and it's not as good as the magenta that I now use. I now use the colour that I now use is Rose Madder Lake by Sennelier, and it's a much better magenta. I will sometimes switch up that magenta with the Isero Pink from Isero, because that's also a really nice colour. The next colour that's been removed completely is the Cobalt Turquoise Light by Winsor & Newton. I did never use this colour at all really. It's quite hard to mix with it because it makes really bright electric greens and it granulates very heavily, something that I don't use a lot in my work, so I never found this one much use, so I just removed it completely. So they're the ones that are completely gone. Next, there have been a few small changes on the palette. So first off, we have the Schlevenier Yellow Lemon. I'm changing this up for Hands Yellow by M. Graham. It's the same pigment, PY3, but I just thought I would just try and use up some of the paint that I have in my collection. I do have a tube of this on backup, so we'll see if it's not really up to par from M. Graham. I will go back to the Old Holland version. The next change is the Delft Blue. This one's from Old Holland. I have replaced this with my own handmade one. The pigment is still the same, still PB60, but I've just had my own handmade version instead of a commercial brand, just because it feels a little bit more personal to me. Next is the Cerulean Blue. This was originally Rembrandt's. I've now changed this to Old Holland because I purchased some in sale, Old Holland one is extremely expensive, so I don't know if I'm going to continue with it once it's all run out. I may go back to the Rembrandt one. The next change is the Caribbean blue from Old Holland. I've just changed this for my handmade one of sapphire blue. The pigment is the same again. There's no difference in quality, they're both really good quality paints, but I just wanted my handmade one as opposed to a commercial one. And the M. Graham's Queen Gold has also changed. I'm now mostly using a single pigment of PY150 by M. Graham called Azo Yellow. So let's look at the actual studio palette that I am using, because they've all dried now, so we can take a better look at that. So these are the colours I'm using 2020. So let's go from this side and by row. So the first colour, Cadmium Red, is the same, it's by Schminker, it's unchanged, and I've not actually managed to refill this colour at all in the palette. I don't use this colour very much, and when I do, I don't need very much of it because it is such a strong colour. So a little bit goes a very long way. The next colour is Perylene Red. This is from Daniel Smith. I have replaced this I think once so far. It's a nice red, I'm not too fussy on it. I won't have any kind of cool red in there. I'm not overly fussy on the red. But it's a really nice colour and it still stays. So Hansa Yellow, as I said, this is by M. Graham, this one. I also do have one by Sennelier somewhere. I've not tried it yet, but that may be going in there instead, depending on how I feel. So Azo Yellow now, this is replacing the Quinacridone Gold that I've been using. I've just changed it up because it's a single pigment, it's a little bit cleaner, and it's more yellow. And I really like this one from M. Graham, so I would imagine that is going to be staying now as the new colour. The next one is still the same. This is Dan's Blue, which is ultramarine blue, handmade, made with PB29. I really like this colour. I'm very picky with ultramarine blues. I've not found a commercial brand, apart from one brand that I like from ultramarine blue. The only brand that I find of ultramarine blue that I like, that's not a handmade brand, is by Sennelier or Jackson's. Apart from that, I've not found an ultramarine blue that's been as good as my one, and I'm not just saying that to blow my own trumpet. And the next, as I said, is Midnight Blue. This is PB60. This is to replace the Delft Blue from Old Holland. It's an Indanthrone blue, it's still the same pigment, but I just wanted it handmade. And this is the very expensive Cerulean Blue here from Old Holland. You can see it is very bright and very heavily pigmented. I don't use the colour an awful lot in my paintings, so I imagine what I have is going to last quite a long time. Next we have Sapphire Blue. So this is PB60, it's a phthalo blue, and this is a handmade version here. I really like this colour, it's still the same pigment. I really love this colour in my palette. The next is a completely unchanged colour, and this is Winsor Violet PV23. I really love the Dioxazine Violet from Winsor & Newton, and I'm going to keep with it because it's the best one that I found, and I'm going to keep using it. I've not replaced it or topped it up in my palette because it is such a strong colour. I don't need to use very much of it when I paint, and I did put quite a lot in there first time around in my palette as well. The next colour again is unchanged. This is Schlesinger Green by Old Holland, a phthalo green, and it's just amazing. I love it, it's great for mixing, and I have topped this colour up, so I have run out of some of it. The next colour is Warm Sepia Extra by Old Holland. It's a convenience mix, so I've not noted the pigments down here on the chart because it's quite a few pigments, and I think it might be the only multi-pigment that I have on my palette, but it is a really nice brown. I really like this one, it's my favourite one, and I've already gone through nearly a whole tube of it, so I've bought a bigger tube that's going to last me longer. Next we have Golden Baroque Red. This was actually put on my palette to replace Burnt Sienna because of how much I dislike Burnt Sienna. I don't use this colour an awful lot. I may switch this out to one of these ones down here when this funny does run out on my palette and needs topping up again. So the next bottom line don't actually have permanent spaces on my palette because my palette does only hold 12 colours. So these are the colours I don't use as often or only use them when painting certain subjects. So we have Rose Meadow Lake by Sennelier. It's a magenta and a really good colour, and it's a staple really for any watercolour palette. The next one is unchanged, it's Mars Yellow, which is a yellow ochre. This is my favourite one, it's super pigmented and it's just really nice. The next is a newer colour, this is Snellier Yellow Deep, a warm custardy yellow. I really like this one. I do usually use a transparent warm yellow when painting botanicals, but sometimes I kind of want that sort of creaminess to it, so I will go for that colour instead. The next colour, again, is unchanged, it's Opera Pink by Winsor & Newton. I'm continuing with this colour because in my light fastness tests, it's holding up quite well, it's not faded too much in the year that I've had it stuck on a window. So I'm keeping with that one. And the next two colours are completely new additions. These are Perylene Green and Perylene Violet. Both are by Daniel Smith, and they're both really nice colours. The Perylene Green is a really nice dark green. It's one of the few colours that I can paint with straight from the tube onto a painting with, and it is really nice. And I've also added the Perylene Violet here. This one was actually recommended to me by Lee Angold. Mixed with Perylene Green, it makes a really nice neutral colour and almost black, which is really good, and it's not too overpowering, so I can use it in paintings and in mixing without worrying about ruining a piece. So yeah, this is my studio palette for 2020. Let me know down in the comment section if you have a set studio palette that you use, or if you've got any colours that you always use every time you paint. These are mine, and it's been 2 years since I've updated this, so it feels good to come back and update this. And it's nice to see that a lot of the colours are still the same, and it's nice to see the new additions as well, and which colours I didn't use very much. It's always really good to have a reevaluation of your studio palettes every now and then, just to see where you are and how you can improve or change things up for you to make things fresh or to improve your painting. Yeah, this is really good. I really enjoy using this studio palette, the actual palette itself, and the full colour choices. So I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, I will leave a link of this up on my Patreon, and down below I will leave links to all the colours on this page where you can buy them. For my handmade ones, because they're not always available, I will leave an alternative down below that you can find from Jackson's. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this. Take care everybody, and bye bye.